part really is, well, the athletes are kind of the forgotten constituent in this group. So I feel like they're sort of powerless. It's really the adults who are calling the shots, which it makes it hard to empower athletes. But, I suppose I could encourage them to speak up for themselves because it's their endeavor. This is what we tend to forget, we adults, that, we're up here pulling the strings as coaches or parents. And, meanwhile, this child down here, what do they want? Child or adolescent, what do they want? Well, that's like beside the point. Let's just move along. Got to get you to practice.
What is it about this area, taking back the game or youth sports? What is it that that really got you motivated on this? Like, what about this area did you see? Did you accompany when you were a young athlete? Like, what about it is important to you?
Well, I've been an athlete my whole life. I continue to participate in sports. I feel like I've benefited so tremendously from my athletics. I value what they can do for a person. And that's why I went into coaching. And that's why my husband and I encouraged it in our kids, although only one really went for it. But, I know it can contribute to a healthy, satisfying life and social life. I mean, my running has been so important to me. And what I saw when I started coaching and also when I went to my son's games was that what I thought of as the purpose of youth sports, which was to develop and grow and develop a love for exercise and competition, had been hijacked by these other greater, more important needs, like getting into a better college. And not even so much about scholarship money, although I know that for many parents, they have this idea that their child is going to get scholarship money at a college, but more just that sports were a means to an end, this other greater end, rather than having value in and of themselves. And I saw that in so many ways, and it really bothered me. And that's when I started kind of poking around the subject and looking at the changes in youth sports. And that's what turned into the book. And I think it's, those of us in charge, we grown-ups, I think it's incumbent on us to change the way we're doing things, because we're not helping kids. It's just, we have this system now that's feast or famine. Low-income kids don't have enough sports opportunities. Middle and upper income kids have, those who can make it through the grind, they're doing too much. And so this little giant middle is left with little. And, I think we should be thinking more seriously about that.
When you were writing the book, and I'll preface this too, prior to the interview that we present, I write an essay about my experience with the topic.
Okay.
I've seen so many parents yell at their kids during games. It affected me. I would tell my parents, please don't talk to me. I am doing my job.
Mm-hmm.
When you were writing the book, when you were thinking about this as a whole, ecosystem of the way that parents and athletes and coaches are interacting in sport, was there one thing that blew you away? Was there one thing where you're like, wow, I didn't believe it was this bad, or I didn't believe that, what I had thought happened to be true?
Well, I can't really say that. I can say there are some facts that really kind of startled me. Mm-hmm. And I think that all parents should know this. This is a finding from Travis Dorsch at the Families in Sport Lab at Utah State. The research found that the more money parents spend on their athletics, their kids' sports, the less the kids like it and the more pressure they feel. So there's an inverse relationship between parent expenditure and child enjoyment. And I think, we parents, if you're an enthusiastic athlete and you're so desperate for your kid to play, and I understand that, it's very hard to resist throwing money at it if you have the money. But in fact, you should not be doing that. You ought to be pulling back and saying, okay, what do you want to do? Go figure it out. sure, I'll play with you in the backyard, or we can find a team, but this is your interest. How would you like to pursue it, instead of leading the charge? So while that's, I guess what I found basically confirmed what I had thought. And I'd like to think that I can change my mind. But it was more like certain, like, particular facts that really stuck out at me. I guess another shocking thing is that was greater than I expected. So maybe this is a better answer, is the how incredibly unlikely it is that a high school kid is going to get a scholarship of any kind. The data, and it's very hard for us to see our kids clearly, and we think they're going to be wonderful, and the little 8 or 9 year old out there is going to get a scholarship. But if you can kind of, hone into your rational mind and look at the data, 6 to 7% of high school athletes play sports in college. 2% of high school athletes get any financial aid, athletic aid. That's mostly in Division I and some in Division II. 15% of Division I athletes get a full ride, and that's primarily in football and basketball. And that's good for them, But the idea that you're banking on this, or that this is why you're driving to tournaments every weekend and dividing up your family and having no spare second for your own life or the rest of the family who don't play sports, it's a pipe dream. And that was shocking to me. And I guess it still stuns me that parents actually think this. Like, do you really think this is going to happen? I mean, I would have a backup plan.
What do you think is the ethos to all of this? The beginning, the foundation of, like, youth sports turned into big industry, and parents and decision makers went along with it. I look at my experience, and I know kids who went to go to IMG and do the academy thing and leave school early to play professionally somewhere, to maybe get a scholarship somewhere. And it's just, I was very thankful my parents put me in a baseball program that I got to play with my friends. And
Yes.
maybe that's why I enjoyed it. There's the two sides to it. What do you think is the foundation of
well,
that?
I mean, I think there's a lot of factors, but one is that, we have such adulation for athletes in this country. They are celebrated figures. I mean, last year, 82 of the top 100 broadcast programs were NFL related. We love our athletes. We put them on pedestals. We have this, it's partly our very competitive system, winner take all society. So, there's this, hagiography about athletes. And, so there's that. And there's also, I think, this going all in, going crazy for your kids' sports is also, a function of larger issues related to the economy, where parents are so nervous about how their kids are going to end up. Are they going to go to an excellent college because that's the surest path to a happy future? And so it becomes, there's this intense parental anxiety about their kids' futures. Mm-hmm. And combined with the fact that this exaggerated fear of stranger danger, we have widespread surveillance of kids. I cannot believe how much surveillance goes on of kids. And kids are more scarce, so they're more precious, so that it's become an article of faith. It's the oxygen parents breathe. That, of course, this is what you do. Of course, you do every possible thing. You throw your life down onto the ground in order to advance your child's prospects. And sports are just a very attractive way to do that. I mean, everybody loves the good jock. Everyone, can kind of celebrate that success, and you feel proud yourself, and it's like a reflection of you when your child does well. I get that too. I felt that way. And it's natural, but I think we also have to kind of like exercise some metacognition and say, hold on a minute. This isn't about me. Again, this is what I spoke of initially. There's confusion about who sports are for. It's really for kids. Mm-hmm. But we adults get so wrapped up in it that it becomes about us, either as a coach or a parent.
there are going to be parents who listen to this who are going to be on teams with other parents who may be going about it the wrong way, right? In sort of the framework that we're talking about here. What can parents do to create a better environment for their athletes?
Well, I think first and foremost, and every youth sports organization will tell you this, is the child or the kid has to be the one calling the shots. It has to come from the kid. How much they play, what they play, at the very basic level, when they're first starting, like you can to introduce them to a variety of sports, but it has to come from them. You can't force a kid to like a sport. You can expose them to a lot, um, be encouraging and positive, but it has to come from them. And I think that is just very, very hard for many parents to do. I think it would be wise for parents to be mindful of the pressure from their peers, the kind of the norms in neighborhoods and teams to like do more, 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 more. I think if we can take a breath and say, hold on, more is not necessarily better. There's this assumption that more training, more work, more equipment, more money is better. In fact, it's not. And I think it would be helpful to kids and parents if they step back and said, okay, let's reevaluate here. What are we trying to do? I think going back to first principles, what are we trying to do here? Instead of getting caught up in the frenzy of a team that's, oh my God, we got to go to Maryland next weekend. And, do we have the right gear? And just getting all caught up in the mechanics and the politics of a team. What are we trying to do? Is this satisfying that purpose? And if not, why are we doing this? But okay, assume your parents they're keeping with it. Of course, they're keeping with it. Their kid loves it. They couldn't possibly withdraw. I think, again, going back to what the child wants, always being positive, and it's really hard to be positive sometimes. If your child does something embarrassing or botches something, if you can't be positive, keep your mouth shut. Keep your mouth shut with the officials. I think there are some organizations that have adopted this policy called Silent Saturdays, where they, like on basketball, say, if you have a gym full of people, where it's like, okay, we're going to do Silent Saturdays. Parents, we welcome your applause, clap, clap, clap. But, it's just, this is the norm. We're going to keep our mouth shut. If we could ask kids what they want, the kids love this. They don't want to be coached from the sideline. They don't want to be told to run or take a shot or go for it. They don't want that. It's embarrassing. So, that's another way parents could help their kids is just keep your mouth shut. Try to disentangle your own ego from how your child does. And that's difficult, but it would be helpful to the child. Oh, one more thing. When I say all this, and this is just, people find this so shocking, is miss some games. Oh my God, I couldn't possibly miss a game. I love to watch them play. It's so great. I get that. I used to go to all my son's games. And it was a mistake. I shouldn't have. Not because I didn't love to watch him play, because I did, but because it's a little reminder to you as the parent that it is not about you, that it is actually your child's game. It's your child's sport. They know that you love them. They know that you care about their sports. It's not going to kill them for you not to be there. And it will actually remind them that it's for them. And it will remind you that, I'm an adult. I may have my own friends. I may have a partner I want to spend time with, or that I should be, because God knows sports are dragging us apart every weekend. So use that time. How about go on a date? Do something that does not revolve around your kids' sports. Everyone would be better off for it.
Are things getting better or worse?
What do you think?
I don't know.
I think it's getting worse. I've been impressed by conversations I've had with younger parents. My kids are older now, so I went through this years ago. I've been impressed by the younger parents I've met who it's they just buy into the idea that sending a 6 year old to playing one sport all year, or their 7 year old to travel soccer, is like, well, this is just what you do. It's like, okay, you got to stop. You need to start thinking for yourself a little bit. You don't have to do this. Just because somebody's offering it to doesn't mean you have to take it. And in fact, it's not helping your child. It's not good for your child. It's somebody's making money off this, but it's not in your family's interest. I guess so. What I mean is that it's almost like there's no end to it. Like what more can be offered that parents will lap up? It's not necessary and it's not helpful. So, into that regard, I think it has gotten worse. I also think that it's gotten much harder for coaches. Um, you know, Parents can be very difficult and unforgiving, and you know, many are great. I want to add that when I was coaching, I had most of the parents I dealt with were wonderful, and I really enjoyed them. But it takes only a few to really kind of ruin it. And when you're dealing with youth sports, which are often volunteer based, it's kind of hard to want to keep coaching if you're just getting flack. And so I think that's gotten harder. We've seen this, exodus of sports officials. 20% of them retired between 2018 and 2021. They're like, I've had enough of this. I do think we're at a point where we have to kind of address some of these problems with the intensity. We need to lower the temperature.
Yeah. Part one of your book is called "How the Game Changed When We Weren't Looking."
Mm-hmm.
What in your view changed, and who was behind that?
Well, I don't want to point fingers because I don't think it's more like this like broad sort of social shift. I mean, there one thing led to another. Like, for example, there was a drop in funding for public programs, the kind of local teams around the corner that I played in, that you probably played in. There's been a decline in that because funding for parks and recreation has dropped. That started in the 70s. At the same time, there's greater demand because of Title IX, so more girls started playing. So there's greater demand, fewer public options, so private people stepped in. And I'm not saying these are bad people either. There was a demand, they filled the demand. That has just escalated, however, to a point where it is not so healthy. Part of that also, in 1997, Disney built the Wide World of Sports complex, which, is this beacon drawing parents with their kids wanting to play their championship games. And it did very well. That was not lost on municipalities around the country, who then built their own sports complexes. There's now about 30,000 of them. So that, you just had this buildup of the privatization of youth sports. So there's, here we are offering all these wonderful, excellent coaches and superior training and fabulous teams that can get you into college. And then at the same time, as I was talking about earlier, there's this worry among parents about their kids' prospects. And oh my gosh, how can I make sure they do well in life and get into a good college? And, sports are like a kind of a logical, socially acceptable, socially valued enterprise. And then the third factor is all the changes at colleges. It seems even more important where your kid goes to school. The U.S. News and World Report rankings have kind of changed the way colleges present themselves. They now encourage more applications. So there's the perception that it's harder to get into college than it used to be. And sports, especially if you're come from a white, wealthy family, sports, that's the surest way in. Not that it's easy. I never want to say, oh, it's like you just play sports. There's so much expected of kids. In my view, way too much in terms of athletics and other things too. But if we're just talking about sports, that's the way in. So, full speed ahead. Play your sport year round from 6th grade on, and get that slot at Amherst, and that's what's driving it.
We've talked about the negative aspects of youth sports. to finish and wrap up, what are some positives that people can look forward to and actually implement and put into action tonight, before practice, before the next game, before the next season?
Yeah, and I realize I focus on the negative here.
No, it's
And
okay. I led you to that.
well, and I love sports, and I think they're so valuable, and they can really be so good. And this is why we need to save them and need to, resurrect what's valuable about them. And I think if we could all kind of take a deep breath and recognize that this is supposed to be about fun, the kids want to play because it's fun. I know, and that feels like, but we got to be serious. I think everyone would be better off if they could just lighten the tone a little bit. Again, it's being positive, it's being light. The thing to say to kids after a game is, I love to watch you play. Not, well, did you think about going up on the left side when you went up to the hoop? I think, your left hand needs some work. To focus on the positive with the kids so that we encourage a love of sports. Because what's going to, encourage long-term participation, which I think most parents want their kids to be active throughout their lives. At least I do. That's the goal, is to get them moving all the time. Then you got to encourage a love of the sport. So how do you do that? You lower the temperature, be positive, keep your mouth shut. If you can't say anything nice, keep your mouth shut. Say nice things, and most of all, let your kid drive the bus, because that's what's going to make it a better experience for them.
Thank you for writing this. I appreciate it. It was amazing to really think about it. I'm going to be a parent soon, couple years, but I want to be prepared, and I want to coach the teams because I trust myself. And that's kind of part of it. Honestly, selfish reason why I wanted to call you is just some advice. And I agree. Things are bad and not getting better. And I think there are good people who maybe don't want to step in and be the coach of the youth team when they probably should, and be the one that leads that bus for those kids too.
Yes. Well, and those coaches get flack too, because also parents come to teams with different goals. One kid, I felt this. I had a team, small teams, and some of the parents were like, I want my daughter to get a scholarship. And others were like, can you just get her moving? And somehow you had to kind of reconcile these different points of view, or different goals on the parents' parts. And when they're younger, you're still going to have that. If you're coaching baseball, some are going to be like, let's get this kid pitching more, and others are going to be like, oh, let's see him run around the bases.
Yeah. Why is my kid hitting sixth? Well, I just
exactly.
Just because. Thank you so much. This was a lot of fun, and I really appreciate it.